Good evening, everyone. How are y'all today? Is everybody all good? All right. I think let us begin. Hello and good day. Yep, I get it. I want to start a book with It Was a Dark and Stormy Night, but, one day. One day I'll get away with it. The Morris dance is common to all inhabited worlds in the multiverse. It is danced under blue skies to celebrate the quickening of the soil, and under bare stars because it's springtime, and with any luck, the carbon dioxide will unfreeze again. The imperative is felt by deep-sea beings who have never seen the sun and urban humans whose only connection with the cycles of nature is that their Volvo once ran over a sheep. It is danced innocently by raggedy-bearded young mathematicians to an inexpert accordion rendering of Mrs. Widgery's lodger, and ruthlessly by such ninja Morris men of New Ankh who can do strange and terrible things with a simple handkerchief and a bell. And it is never danced properly. Except on the Discworld, which is flat and supported on the backs of 4 elephants which travel through space on the great shell of Achuin, the world turtle. And even there, only in one place have they got it right. It's a small village high in the Ramtop Mountains, where the big and simple secret is handed down across the generations. There the men dance on their first day of spring, backwards and forwards, bell tied under their knees, white shirts flapping, and it's generally considered a nice day out for all the family. But that isn't the secret. The secret is the other dance. And that won't happen for a while yet. There's a ticking, such as might be made by a clock, and indeed in the sky there's a clock, and the ticking of freshly minted seconds flows out from it. At least, it looks like a clock, but it is in fact exactly the opposite, and the biggest hand goes around just once. There's a plane under a dim sky. It is covered with gentle rolling curves that might remind you of something else if you saw it from a long way away, and if you did see it from a long way away, you'd be very glad that you were, in fact, a long way away. 3 grey figures floated just above it. Exactly what they were can't be described in normal language. Some people might call them cherubs, although there was nothing rosy-cheeked about them. They might be numbered among those who see it that gravity operates. They might be numbered among those who see it to the gravity that operates and the time that stays separate from space. Call them auditors. Auditors of reality. They were in conversation without speaking. They didn't need to speak. They just changed reality so that they had spoken. One said, "It has never happened before. Can it be done?" One said, "It will have to be done. There's a personality. Personalities come to an end. Only forces endure." Oh, such a beautiful line. and it said this with a certain satisfaction. One said, besides, there have been irregularities. Where you get personality, you get irregularities. Well-known fact. One said, has he worked inefficiently? One said, no, we can't get him there. One said, that's the point. The word is him becoming a personality is inefficient. We don't want it to spread. Supposing gravity developed a personality, supposing it decided to like people. One said, got a crush on them, sort of thing. One said in a voice that would have been even chillier if it was not already at absolute zero. No. One said, sorry, just my little joke. One said, besides, sometimes he wonders about his job. Such speculation is dangerous. One said, no argument there. One said, then we are agreed. One, who seemed to have been thinking about something, said, just one moment. Did you not just use the singular pronoun my? Not developing a personality, are you? One said guiltily, who? Us? One said, well, there's a personality. There's a discord. One said, yes, very true. One said, all right, but watch it in the future. One said, then we are agreed. They looked up at the face of Azrael, outlined against the sky. In fact, it was the sky. Azrael nodded, slowly. One said, very well, where's this place? One said, it is the Discworld. It rides through space on the back of a giant turtle. One said, oh, that sort. I hate them. One said, you're doing it again. You said I. One said, no, I didn't. I never said, oh, bugger. It burst into flame and burnt the same way that a small cloud of vapor burns, quickly and with no residual mess. Almost immediately, another one appeared. It was identical in appearance to its vanished sibling. One said, let that be a lesson. To become a personality is to end. And now let us go. Azrael watched them skim away. It's hard to fathom the thoughts of a creature so big that in real space his length would be measured only in terms of the speed of light. But he turned his enormous bulk and with eyes that stars could be lost in, sought among the myriad worlds for a flat one, on the back of a turtle. The Discworld. World and mirror of worlds. It sounded interesting. And in his prison of 1 billion years, Azrael was bored. And this is the room where the future pours into the vast via the pinch of the now. Timers line the walls, not hourglasses, although they have the same shape, not egg timers, such as you might buy as a souvenir, attached to a small board with the name of the holiday resort of your choice jauntily inscribed on it by someone with the same sense of style as a jelly donut. It's not even sand in there, it's seconds, endlessly turning, and maybe into the was. And every lifetimer has a name on it. And the room is full of the soft hissing of people living. Picture the scene, and now add the sharp clicking of bone on stone getting closer. The dark shape across the field of vision moves up the endless shelves of sibilant glassware. Click, click. Here's a glass with the top bulb nearly empty. Bone fingers rise and reach out. Select. And another. Select. And more. Many, many more. Select, select. It's all in a day's work, or it would be if days existed here. Click, click. As the dark shape moves patiently among the rows and stops and hesitates. Because there's a small gold timer not much bigger than a watch. It wasn't there yesterday. Or wouldn't have been if yesterday's existed here. I like that idea, Taro. Bony fingers close around it and hold it up to the light. It's got a name on it, in small capital letters. The name is Death. Death put down the timer and then picked it up again. The sands of time were already pouring through. He turned it over experimentally just in case, and the sand went on pouring. Only now it was going upwards. He hadn't really expected anything else. It meant that, even if tomorrows could exist here, there weren't going to be any. Not anymore. There was a movement in the air behind him. Death turned slowly and addressed the figure that wavered indistinctly in the gloom. Why? I told him, but that is not right. I told him that, no, it was right. Not a muscle moved on Death's face because it hadn't got any. I shall appeal. I told him he should know that there was no appeal, never any appeal, never any appeal. Death thought about this and then said, I have always done my duty as I saw fit. The figure floated closer. It looked vaguely like a grey-robed and hooded monk. I told him, we know. That's why we're letting you keep the horse. The sun was near the horizon. The shortest-lived creatures on the disk were mayflies, which barely make it through 24 hours. Two of the oldest zigzagged aimlessly over the waters of a trout stream, discussing history with some younger members of the evening hatching. You don't get that kind of sun now that you used to get, said one of them. You're right, there. We had proper sun in the good old hours. It was all yellow, none of this red stuff. It was higher, too, it was, you're right. And nymphs and larvae showed you a bit of respect. They did, said the other mayfly vehemently. I reckon if mayflies these hours behaved a bit better, we'd still be having proper sun. This is what trumpers sound like. The younger mayflies listened politely. I remember, said one of the oldest mayflies, when all of these fields were as far as you can see. The younger mayflies looked around. It's still fields, one of them ventured, after a polite interval. I remember it when it was better fields, said the old mayfly sharply. Yes, said his colleague. And there was a cow. That's right, you're right, I remember that cow. Stood there for, 40, 50 minutes. It was brown, I recall. You don't get cows like that at these hours. You don't get cows at all. What's a cow? Said one of the hatchlings. See, said the oldest mayfly triumphantly. That's modern ephemeroterra for you. It paused. What are we doing before we're talking about the sun? Zigzagging aimlessly over the water, said one of the young flies. That was a fair bet in any case. No, before that. Oh, you were telling us about the great trout. Ah, yes, right. The trout. Well, you see, if you've been a good mayfly, zigzagging up and down properly, taking heed of your elders and betters, and yes, taking heed of your elders and betters, and then eventually the great trout, clop, clop. Yes, said one of the younger mayflies. There was no reply. The great trout what? Said another mayfly nervously. They looked down at the series of expanding concentric rings on the water. The holy sign, said the mayfly. I remember being told about that. The great circle in the water must be the sign of the great trout. The oldest of the young mayflies watched the water thoughtfully. It was beginning to realize that, as the most senior fly present, it now had the privilege of hovering closest to the surface. They say that the mayfly at the top of the zigzagging crowd, when the great trout comes for you, you go into a land flowing with... Mayflies don't eat. It was at a loss. Flowing with water. It finished lamely. I wonder, said the oldest mayfly. It must be really good there, said the youngest. Oh, why? Because no one ever wants to come back. Whereas the oldest thing in the Discworld were the famous counting pines, which grow right on the permanent slow line on the high ramp-top mountains. The counting pine is one of the few known examples of borrowed evolution. Most species do their own evolving, making it up as they go along, which is the way nature intended. And this is all very natural and organic and in tune with mysterious cycles of the cosmos, which believes there's nothing like millions of years of really frustrating trial and error to give a species moral fiber and, in some cases, a backbone. I love this man's writing so much. This is probably fine from the species point of view, but from the perspective of the actual individuals involved, it can be a real pig, or at least a small pink root-eating reptile that one day might evolve into a real pig. So the counting pines avoided all of this by letting other vegetables do their evolving for them. A pine seed coming to rest anywhere on the disc immediately picks up the most effective local genetic code via morphic resonance and grows into whatever best suits the soil and climate, usually doing much better at it than the native trees themselves, which it usually usurps. I love this man. What makes the counting pines particularly noteworthy is the way they count. Being dimly aware that human beings had learned to tell age of a tree by counting the rings, the original counting pines decided that it was why humans cut trees down. Overnight, every counting pine readjusted its genetic code to produce, about eye level on its trunk, in pale letters, its precise age. Within a year, they were fettered almost to extinction by the ornamental house number plate industry, and only very few survive in hard-to-reach areas. The 6 counting pines in this clump were listening to the oldest, whose gnarled trunk declared it to be 31,734 years old. The conversation took 17 years, but it has been sped up. I remember when all this wasn't fields. The pines stared out over 1,000 miles of landscape. The sky flickered like a bad special effect from a time travel movie. Snow appeared, stayed for an instant, and melted. What was it then? Said the nearest pine. Ice, if you can call it ice. We had proper glaciers in those days. Not like the ice you get now, here for one season, gone the next. It hung around for ages. What happened to it then? It went. Went where? Where things go, where everything's always rushing off to. Wow, that was a sharp one. What was? The winter just then? Call that a winter? When I was a sapling, we had winters. Then the tree vanished. After a shocked pause for a couple of years, one of the clumps said, he just went, just like that. One day he was here, and the next he was gone. If the other trees had been humans, they would have shuffled their feet. It happens, lad, said one of them carefully. He's been taken to a better place. Footnote. In this case, 3 better places, the front gates of numbers 31, 7 and 34 Elm Street, Ankh-Morpork. You can be sure of that. He was a good tree. The young tree, which was a mere 5,111 years old, said, what sort of better place? We're not sure, said one of the clump. It trembled uneasily in a week-long gale. But we think it involves sawdust. Since the trees were unable to sense any event that took place less than a day, they never heard the sound of axes. That's kind of sad. My goodness, that's sad. Whittlepoon's oldest wizard in the entire faculty of Unseen University, home of magic, wizardry, and big dinners, was also going to die. He knew it in a frail and shaky sort of way. Of course, he mused as he wheeled his wheelchair over the flagstones towards his ground floor study. In a general sort of way, everyone knew they were going to die, even the common people. No one knew where you were before you were born, but when you were born, it wasn't long before you found you'd arrived with your return ticket already punched. But wizards really knew. Not if death involved violence or murder, of course, but if the cause of death was simply a case of running out of life, then you knew. You generally got the premonition in time to return your library books to make sure your best suit was clean and borrow quite large sums of money from your friends. He was 130. It occurred to him that for most of his life, he'd been an old man. Doesn't seem fair, really. And no one said anything. He'd mentioned it in the uncommon room last week, and no one had taken the hint. At lunch today, they'd hardly spoken to him. Even his so-called friends seemed to be avoiding him. as he wasn't even trying to borrow money. It was like not having your birthday remembered, only worse. He was going to die all alone, and no one cared. He bumped the door open with the wheel of a chair and fumbled on the table by the door for the tinderbox. That was another thing. Hardly anyone used tinderboxes these days. They bought the big, smelly yellow matches the alchemists made, Wendell disapproved. Fire was important. You shouldn't be able to switch it on just like that, and it didn't show any respect. There was people these days always rushing around and fires. Yes, it had been a lot warmer in the old days too. The kind of fires they had these days didn't warm you up unless you were nearly on top of them. It was something in the wood. It was the wrong sort of wood. Everything was wrong these days, more thin, more fuzzy. No real life in anything. And the days were shorter. Something had gone wrong with the days. They were shorter days. Every day took an age to go by, which was odd, because days, plural, went past like a stampede. There weren't many things people wanted a 130-year-old wizard to do, and Wendell had got into the habit of arriving at the dining table 2 hours before each meal, simply to pass the time. Endless days, going by fast, didn't make sense. Mind you, you didn't get the sense now that you used to get in the old days. And they let the university be run by mere boys now. In the old days, it had been run by proper wizards, great big men built like barges, the kind of wizards you look up to. And suddenly, they'd all gone off somewhere, and Wendell was being patronized by these boys who still had some of their own teeth. Like that Ridcully lad. Wendell remembered him clearly. Thin lad, sticking out ears, never wiped his nose properly, cried for his mother in the dorm on the first night, always up to mischief. Someone had tried to tell Wendell that Ridcully was Arch-Chancellor now. They must think he was daft. Where was that damn tinderbox? Fingers. You used to get proper fingers in the old days. Somebody pulled the covers off a lantern. Someone else pushed a drink into his groping hand. Surprise! In the hall of the House of Death is a clock with a pendulum. Like a blade, but with no hands. Because in the House of Death, there is no time but the present. There was, of course, the present before the present now, but that was also the present. It was just an older one. And the pendulum is a blade that would have made Edgar Allan Poe give it all up and start again as a stand-up comedian on the scamp-in-a-casket circuit. It swings with a faint whum-whum noise, gently slicing thin rashes of interval from the bacon of eternity. Beautiful line. Death stalked past the clock into the sombre gloom of his study. Albert, his servant, was waiting for him with the towel and dusters. "Good morning, master." Death sat down silently in his big chair. Albert draped the towel over his angular shoulders. "Another nice day," he said conversationally. Death said nothing. Albert flapped the polishing cloth and pulled back Death's cowl. "Albert." "Sir." Death pulled out a tiny golden timer. "Do you see this?" "Yes, sir. Very nice. Never seen one like that before. Whose is it?" "Mine." Albert's eyes swiveled sideways. On one corner of Death's desk was a large timer in a black frame. It contained no sand. "I thought that one was yours, sir." "It was. Now this is a retirement present from Azrael himself." Albert peered at the thing in Death's hand. "But the sand, sir, it's pouring." "Quite so. But that means, it means that one day the sand will all be poured, Albert." "I know that, sir, but I thought time was something that happened to other people, sir, doesn't it? Not to you, sir." By the end of the sentence, Albert's voice was beseeching. Death pulled off the towel and stood up. "Come with me." "But you are Death, Master," said Albert, running crab-legged after the tall figure as it led the way out into the hall and down the passage to the stable. "Is this some sort of joke? Is it?" he added hopefully. "I'm not known for my sense of fun." "Well, of course not. No offense meant. But listen, you can't die because you're Death. You'd have to happen to yourself. It'll be like that snake that eats its own tail. Nevertheless, I am going to die. There is no appeal." "But what will happen to me?" Albert said. Terror glittered on the words like flakes of metal on the edge of a knife. "There will be a new death." Albert drew himself up. "I don't think I could serve a new master," he said. "Then go back into the world. I will give you money. You have been a good servant, Albert. But if I go back—" "Yes," said Death, "you will die." In the warm, horsey gloom of the stable, Death's pale horse looked up from its oath and gave a little whinny of greeting. The horse's name was Binky. He was a real horse. Death had tried fiery steeds and skeletal horses in the past, and found them rather impractical, especially the fiery ones, which tended to set light to their own bedding and stand in the middle of it looking embarrassed. Death took the saddle down from its hook and glanced at Albert, who was suffering a crisis of conscience. Thousands of years before, Albert had opted to serve Death rather than die. He wasn't exactly immortal. Real time was forbidden in Death's realm. There was only the ever-changing now, but it went on for a very long time. He had less than 2 months of real time left. He hoarded his days like bars of gold. He began, "That is, you fear to die." "It's not that I don't want. I've always. It's just, life is a habit that's hard to break." Ooh. Life is a habit. It's hard to break. If any of you are depressed, think about that. Life is a habit that's hard to break. Death watched him curiously, as one might watch a beetle that had landed on its back and couldn't turn over. Finally, Albert lapsed into silence. "I understand," said Death, unhooking Binky's bridle. "But you don't seem worried that you're really going to die?" "Yes. It will be a great adventure." "It will? You're not afraid?" "I do not know how to be afraid." "I could show you if you'd like," Albert ventured. "No. I should like to learn by myself. I shall have experiences at last." "Master, if you go, there will be—" "A new death will arise from the minds of the living, Albert." "Oh." Albert looked relieved. "You don't happen to know what he'll be like, do you?" "No." "Perhaps I'd better, clean the place up a bit, get an inventory prepared, that sort of thing." "Good idea," said Death, as kindly as possible. "When I see the new death, I shall heartily recommend you." "Oh, you'll see him then?" "Oh, yes. And I must leave now." "What, so soon?" "Certainly. Mustn't waste time." Death adjusted the saddle, then turned and held the tiny hourglass profoundly in front of Albert's hooked nose. "See? I have time. At last, I have time." Albert backed away nervously. "And now that you have it, what are you going to do with it?" he said. Death mounted his horse. "I am going to spend it." The party was in full swing. The banner with the legend, "Goodbye, Wendell, 130 glorious years," was drooping a bit in the heat. Things were getting to the point where there was nothing to drink but the punch and nothing to eat but the strange yellow dip with the highly suspicious tortillas, and nobody minded. The wizards chatted with the four. In the middle of it all, Wendell Poon sat with a huge glass of rum and a funny hat on his head. He was almost in tears. "A genuine going-away party," he kept muttering. "I haven't had one of them since old Scratcher Holsock went away. Hoxall, sorry. The capital letters fell into place easily. Back in the year of the intimidating porpoise, everyone had forgotten about them. The librarian looked up the details for us, said the bursar, indicating a large orangutan who was trying to blow into a party squeaker. He also made the banana dip. I hope someone eats it soon. He leaned down. Can I help you to some more potato salad, he said, in a loud, deliberate voice used for talking to imbeciles and old people. Wendell cupped a trembling hand to his ear. What? What? More salad, Wendell? No, thank you. Another sausage, then. What? Sausage. They give me terrible gas all night, said Wendell. He considered this for a moment and then took 5. Shouted the bursar, do you happen to know what time? Eh? What time? 9:30, said Wendell, promptly, if indistinctly. Well, that's nice, said the bursar. It gives you the rest of the evening, free. Wendell rummaged in the dreadful recesses of his wheelchair, a graveyard for old cushions, dog-eared books, and ancient half-sucked sweets. He flourished a small green-covered book and pushed it into the bursar's hands. The bursar turned it over. Scrawled on the cover were the words Wendell Poons, his diary. A piece of bacon rind marked today's date. Under things to do, a crabbed hand had written, die. The bursar couldn't stop himself from turning the pages. Yes, under tomorrow's date, things to do, get born. His gaze slid away into a small table in the side of the room. Despite the fact that the room was quite crowded, there had been an area of clear floor around the table, as if some kind of personal space that no one was about to invade. There had been special instructions in the going-away ceremony concerning the table. It had to have a black cloth with a few magic sigils embroidered on it. It had a plate containing a selection of better canapes. It had a glass of wine. After considerable discussion among the wizards, a funny paper hat had been added as well. They all had an expectant look. The bursar took out his watch and flicked open the lid. It was one of those newfangled pocket watches with hands. They pointed to 9:15. He shook it. A small hatch opened under the 12, and a very small demon poked its head out. Knock it off, governor. I'm peddling as fast as I can. He closed the watch again and looked around desperately. No one else seemed anxious to come too near Wendell Poons. The bursar felt it was up to him to make polite conversation. He surveyed impossible topics and presented problems. Wendell Poons helped him out. I'm thinking about coming back as a woman, he said conversationally. The bursar opened and shut his mouth a few times. I'm looking forward to it, Poons went on. I think it might be jolly good fun. The bursar rifled desperately through his limited repertoire of small talk regarding women. He leaned down to Wendell's gnarled ear. Isn't there rather a lot of washing things? He struck out aimlessly. And making beds and cookery and all those sort of things? Not the kind of life I have in mind, said Wendell firmly. The bursar shut his mouth. The Arch-Chancellor banged the table with the spoon. Brothers, he began, when there was something approaching the silence. This prompted a loud, ragged chorus of cheering. As you know, we're here tonight to mark the, retirement, nervous laughter, of our old friend and colleague Wendell Poons. You know, seeing old Wendell sitting here tonight puts me in mind, as luck would have it, of the story of the cow with the 3 wooden legs. It appears there was this cow and... The bursar let his mind wander. He knew the story. The Arch-Chancellor always mucked up the punchline. And in any case, he had other things on his mind. He kept looking back at the table. The bursar was a kindly, if nervous soul, and quite enjoyed his job. Apart from anything else, no other wizard wanted it. Lots of wizards wanted to be Arch-Chancellor, for example, or the head of one of the 8 orders of magic, but practically no wizards wanted to spend lots of time in an office shuffling bits of paper and doing sums. All the paperwork of the university tended to accumulate in the bursar's office, which meant that he went to bed tired at night's end, but at least slept soundly, and didn't have to check very hard for unexpected scorpions in his nightshirt. Killing off a wizard of a higher grade was a recognized way of getting advancement in the orders. However, the only person likely to want to kill the bursar was somebody else who derived quiet pleasure from columns of numbers, all neatly arranged, and people like that don't often go in for murder. Footnote. At least until the day they suddenly pick up a paper knife and carve their way through the cost accounting and forensic history books. He recalled his childhood long ago in the Ramtop Mountains. He and his sister used to leave a glass of wine and a cake out for every Hogswatch night, for the Hogfather. Things had been different then. He'd been a lot younger and didn't know much and probably been a lot happier. For example, he hadn't known that he might one day be a wizard and join other wizards in leaving a glass of wine and cake and a rather suspect chicken vol au vent and a paper party hat for someone else. There'd been Hogswatch parties too when he was just a little boy. They'd always follow a certain pattern. Just when all the children were nearly sick with excitement, one of the grown-ups would say archly, "I think we're going to have a special visitor." And amazingly, on cue, there'd be a suspicious ringing of hog bells outside the window, and in would come. The bursar shook his head. Someone's granddad in false whiskers, of course. Some jolly old boy with a sack of toys, stamping the snow off his boots. Someone who gave you something, whereas tonight... Of course, old Windle probably felt different about it. After 130 years, death probably had a certain attraction. He probably became quite interested in finding out what happened next. The Arch-Chancellor's convoluted anecdote wound jerkily to its close, and the assembled wizards laughed dutifully, and then tried to work out the joke. The bursar looked surreptitiously at his watch. It was now 20 minutes past 9. Wendell Poons made a speech. It was long and rambling and disjointed, and went on about the good old days he seemed to think about. Most of the people around him were people who had been, in fact, dead for about 50 years. But that didn't matter because he got into the habit of not listening to old Wendell. The bursar couldn't tear his eyes away from the watch. From inside came the squeak of the treadle as the demon patiently pedaled his way towards infinity. 25 minutes past the hour. The bursar wondered how it was supposed to happen. Did you hear? "I think we're going to have a very special visitor," hoofbeats outside. Did the door actually open, or did he come through it? Silly question. He was renowned for his ability to get into sealed places, especially into sealed places. And if you thought about it logically, sealing yourself away, it was only a matter of time. The bursar hoped. He'd used the door properly. His nerves were twinging, as it was. The conversational level was dropping. Quite a few other wizards, the bursar noted, were glancing at the door. Wendell was at the center of a tactfully widening circle. No one was actually avoiding him. It was just that an apparent random Brownian motion was gently moving everyone away. Wizards can see death, and when a wizard dies, death arrives in person to usher him into the beyond. The bursar wondered why this was considered a plus. "I don't know what you're all looking at," said Wendell cheerfully. The bursar opened his watch. The hatch under the 12 snapped up. "Can you knock it off with all the shaking around?" squeaked the demon. "I keep losing count." Sorry, it was 9:29. The Arch-Chancellor stepped forward. "Bye then, Wendell," he said, shaking the old man's parchment-like hand. "The old place won't seem the same without you." "Don't know if we'll manage," said the bursar, thankfully. "Good luck in the next life," said the dean. "Drop in if you're ever passing and happen to, remember who you've been. Don't be a stranger, you hear," said the Arch-Chancellor. Wendell Poons nodded amiably. He hadn't heard what they were saying. He just nodded on general principles. The wizards, as one man, faced the door. The hatch under the 12 snapped up again. "Bing, bing, bong, bing," said the demon. "Bingle, bongy, boing, boing, bing." "What? 9:30, said the demon. The wizards turned to Wendell Poons, and they looked faintly accusing. "What are you all looking at?" The second hand on the watch squeaked onwards. "How are you feeling?" "Never better," said Wendell. "Is there any more of that rum left?" The assembled wizards watched him pour a generous measure into his beaker. You want to go easy on that stuff, said the Dean nervously. Good health, said Wendell Poons. The Arch-Chancellor drummed his fingers on the table. Mr. Poons, are you quite sure? Wendell had gone off on a tangent. Any more of these tortillas, not that I call it proper food, dipping bits of bicky and sludge. What's so special about that? What I could do with right now is one of Mr. Dribbler's famous meat pies. And then he died. Over in Quirm Way, I'm told. Quite the storm last night, too. Lots of shipwrecks, I dare say, said the lecturer in recent runes. And of course it's springtime, when you get great many avalanches in the mountains. And plagues. The Arch-Chancellor stroked his beard thoughtfully. He said. Alone of all the creatures in the world, trolls believe that all living things go through time backwards. If the past is visible and the future is hidden, they say it means you must be facing the wrong way. Everything alive is going through life back to front. And this is a very interesting idea, considering it was invented by a race who spent most of their time hitting one another on the head with rocks. Whichever way around it is, time is something that every living creature possesses. Death galloped down through towering black clouds, and now he had time too, the time of his life. Wendell Poons peered into darkness. Hello? He said. Hello, anyone there? What ho? There was a distant forlorn soughing as of wind at the end of the tunnel. Come out, wherever you are, said Wendell, his voice trembling with mad cheerfulness. Don't worry, I'm quite looking forward to it, to tell the truth. He clapped his spiritual hands and rubbed them together with forced enthusiasm. Get a move on, some of us have got new lives to go to, he said. The darkness remained inert. There was no shape, no sound. It was void, without form. The spirit of Wendell Poons moved on in the face of darkness. It shook its head. Blow this for a lark, it muttered. It isn't right at all. It hung around for a while, and because there didn't seem anything else for it, headed for the only home it had ever known. It was a home he had occupied for 130 years. It wasn't expecting him back and put up a lot of resistance. You either had to be very determined or powerful to overcome that sort of thing, but Wendell Poons had been a wizard for more than a century. Besides, it was like breaking into your own house, the old familiar property that you lived in for years. You knew where the metaphorical window was that you didn't shut properly. In short, Wendell Poons went back to Wendell Poons. Wizards don't believe in gods the same way that most people don't find it necessary to believe in, say, tables. They know they're there. They know they're there for a purpose. They probably agree that they have a place in the well-organized universe. But they wouldn't see the point of believing or going around saying, oh, great table without whom we are naught. Anyway, either gods are there, whether you believe it or not, or exist as a function of the belief. So either way, you might as well ignore the whole business and, as it were, eat off your knees. Nevertheless, there's a small chapel of the university's great hall, because while wizards stand right behind the philosophy as outlined above, you don't become a successful wizard by getting up God's noses, even if those noses only exist in ethereal or metaphorical senses. Because while wizards don't believe in gods, they know for a fact that gods believe in gods. And in this chapel lay the body of Wendell Poons. The university had instituted 24 hours laying in state ever since the embarrassing affair 30 years prior with the late Priscilla Merry Prankster Treater. The body of Wendell Poons opened its eyes. Coins jingled to the stone floor. The hands crossed over his chest, unclenched. Wendell raised his head. Some idiot has stuck a lily on his stomach. His eyes swiveled sideways. There was a candle on either side of his head. He raised his head some more. There were 2 more candles down there too. Thank goodness for old Teeter, he thought. Otherwise he'd be looking at the underside of a rather cheap pine lid. Funny thing, he thought. I'm thinking, clearly. Wow. Wendell lay back, feeling his spirit refilling his body, like gleaming molten metal running through a mold. White-hot thoughts seared across the darkness of his brain, fired sluggish neurons into action. But it was never like this when I was alive. But I'm not dead. Not alive and not dead. Sort of non-alive or undead. Oh dear. He swung himself upright. Muscles that hadn't worked properly for 70 or 80 years jerked into overdrive. For the first time in his entire life, he corrected himself. Better make that period of existence. Windlepoon's body was entirely under Windlepoon's control. And Windlepoon's spirit wasn't about to take any lip from a bunch of muscles. Now the body stood up. The knee joints resisted for a while, but they were no more able to withstand the onslaught of willpower than a sick mosquito can withstand a blowtorch. The door to the chapel was locked, however. Wendell found the merest pressure was enough to pull the lock out of the woodwork and leave fingerprints on the metal of the door, that one of the university's 4 daily meals was in progress. He wondered whether you're allowed to eat when you were dead. Probably not, he thought. And he could eat anyway. And could he eat anyway? It wasn't that he wasn't hungry, it was just that he knew how to think, and walking and moving were just a matter of twitching some fairly obvious nerves, but how exactly did your stomach work? It began to dawn on Wendell that the human body is not run by the brain, despite the brain's opinion on the matter. In fact, it is run by dozens of complex automatic systems whirring and clicking away with a kind of precision that isn't noticed until it breaks down. He surveyed himself from the control room of his skull. He looked at the silent chemical factory of his liver with the same sinking feeling as a canoe builder might survey the controls of a computerized supertanker. The mysteries of his kidneys awaited Wendell's mastery of renal control. What, when you got right down to it, was a spleen? And how did you make it go? His heart sank. Or rather, it didn't. Oh, gods, muttered Wendell, and leaned against the wall. How did it work now? He prodded a few likely-looking nerves. Was it systolic, diastolic? And then there were the lungs, too. Like a conjurer kept keeping 18 plates spinning at the same time, like a man trying to program a video recorder from an instruction manual translated from Japanese into Dutch by a Korean rice husker. Like, in fact, a man finding out what total self-control really means. Wendell Poons lurched onwards. It's really nice. The wizards of the unseen university set great store by the big solid meals. A man couldn't be expected to get down some serious wizarding they held without soup, fish, game, several huge plates of meat, a pie or two, something big and wobbly with cream on it, a little savoury thing on toast, fruit, nuts, and a brick thick mint with coffee. It gave him a lining to his stomach. It was also important that the meals were served at regular times. It was what gave the day shape, they said. Except for the bursar, of course, he didn't eat much, but lived on his nerves. He was certain he was anorectic. But every time he looked in the mirror, he saw a fat man. It was the Arch-Chancellor standing behind him and shouting at him. And it was the bursar's unfortunate fate to be sitting opposite the doors when Windle Poons smashed them in because it was easier than fiddling with the handles. He bit through his wooden spoon. The wizards revolved on their benches to stare. Windle Poons swayed for a moment, assembling control of his vocal cords, lips and tongue, and said, "I think I might be able to metabolize alcohol." The Arch-Chancellor was the first one to recover. "Windle," he said, "we thought you were dead." He had to admit it wasn't a very good line. You didn't put people on a slab with candles and lilies all around them because you think they've got a bit of a headache and want a nice lie down for half an hour. Windle took a few steps forward. The nearest wizards fell over themselves in an effort to get away. "I'm dead, you bloody young fool," he muttered. "Think I go around looking like this all the time? Good grief." He glared at the assembled wizardry. "Anyone here know what a spleen is supposed to do?" He reached the table, managed to sit down. "Probably something to do with digestion," he said. "Funny thing, you can go through your whole life with the bloody thing ticking away or whatever it does, gurgling or whatever, and you never know what the hell it actually is for. It's like when you're lying in bed at night and when you hear your stomach or something go plip, 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 going, it's just a gurgle to you. But who knows what marvelously complex chemical exchange processes are really going—" "You are undead?" said the bursar, managing to get the words out at last. "I didn't ask to be," said the late Windle Poons, irritably, looking at the food and wondering how the blazes one went on about turning it into Windle Poons. "I only came back because there was nowhere else to go. Think I want to be here?" "But surely," said the Arch-Chancellor, "didn't you... You know the fellow, the one with the skull and the scythe. Never saw him," said Windle, shortly, inspecting the nearest dishes. "Really takes it out of you, this undying." The wizards made a frantic signal to one another over his head. He looked up and glared at them. "And don't think I can't see all them frantic signals," and he was amazed to realize that this was true. Eyes that viewed the past 60 years through the pale and fuzzy veil had been bullied into operating like the finest optical machinery. In fact, two main bodies of thought were occupying the minds of the wizards at Unseen University. What was being thought by most of the wizards was, "This is terrible. Is it really old Windle in there? He was such a sweet old buffer. How can we get rid of it? How can we get rid of it?" What was being thought by Windle Poons in the humming, flashing cockpit of his brain was, "Well, it's true. There is life after death, and it's the same one. Just my luck. Well, what are you going to do about it?" It was 5 minutes later. Half a dozen of the most senior wizards scurried the draughty corridor in the wake of the Arch-Chancellor, whose robes billowed out behind him. The conversation went like this. "It's got to be Windle. He even talks like him. That's not old Windle. Windle was a lot older." "Older? Older than dead?" "He said he wants his old bedroom back, and I don't see why I should have to move out. Did you see his eyes? Like gimlets." "Huh? What do you mean?" "You mean like that dwarf who runs the delicatessen on Cable Street? I mean, they bore into you. It's got a lovely view of the gardens, and I've had all my stuff moved in, and it's not fair." "Has this ever happened before?" "Well, there was old Teeter. But yes, he never actually died. He just used to paint used to put green paint on his face and push the lid off the coffin and shout, "Surprise! We've never had zombies here." He's a zombie? I think so. Doesn't mean he'll be playing kettle drums and doing that bimbo dancing all night then. Is that what they do? Old Windle? Doesn't sound like his cup of tea. He never liked dancing much when he was alive. Anyway, you can't trust those voodoo gods. Never trust a god who grins all the time and wears a top hat. That's my motto. I'm damned. I'm never going to give up my bedroom for a zombie after waiting years for it. Is it? That's a funny motto. Windlepoon strolled the inside of his own head again. Strange thing is, now he was dead, or not living anymore, or whatever he was, his mind felt clearer than it ever had been. The controls seemed to be getting easier too. He hardly had to bother about the whole respiratory thing. The spleen seemed to be working after a fashion, and the senses were operating at full speed. The digestive system was a bit of a mystery, though. He looked at himself in a silver plate. He looked dead. Pale face, red under the eyes, a dead body. Operating, but still basically dead. Was that fair? Was that justice? Was that a proper reward for being a firm believer in reincarnation for almost 130 years? You come back as a corpse? No wonder the undead were traditionally considered to be very angry. Something wonderful, if you took the long view, was about to happen. If you took the short or medium view, something horrible was about to happen. It's like the difference between seeing a beautiful new star in the winter sky and actually being close to the supernova. It's the difference between the beauty of morning dew on a cobweb and actually being a fly. It was something that wouldn't normally have happened for thousands of years. It was about to happen now. It was about to happen at the back of a disused cupboard in a tumble-down cellar in the Shades, the oldest and most disreputable part of Ankh-Morpork. Plop. It was a sound as soft as the first drop of rain on a century of dust. Maybe we could get a black cat to walk across his coffin. He hasn't got a coffin, wailed the bursar, whose grip on sanity was always slightly tentative. Okay, we buy him a nice new coffin and get a black cat to walk across it. No, that's stupid. We've got to make him pass water. What? Pass water? Undeads can't do it. The wizards, who had crowded into the Arch-Chancellor's study, gave the statement, their full, fascinated attention. You sure? Said the Dean. Well-known fact, said the lecturer in recent runes flatly. He used to pass water all the time when he was alive. Not when he is dead, though. Yeah, makes sense. Running water. It's running water, sorry. They can't cross over it. Well, I can't cross running water either, said the Dean. Undead! Undead! The bursar was becoming a little unglued. Oh, stop teasing him, said the lecturer, patting the trembling man on the back. Well, I can't, said the Dean. I sink. Undead can't cross running water even when on a bridge. And is he the only one, eh? Are we going to have a plague of them? Said the lecturer. The Arch-Chancellor drummed his fingers on his desk. Dead people walking around is unhygienic, he said. The silence then. No one had ever looked at it that way, but Mudstrom Ridcully was just the sort of man who would. Mudstrom Ridcully was, depending on your point of view, either the worst or the best Arch-Chancellor that the Unseen University had had for 100 years. There was too much of him, for one thing. It wasn't that he was particularly big, it's just that he had the kind of huge personality that fits any available space. He'd get roaring drunk at supper, and that was fine and acceptable wizardly behavior. But then he'd go back to his room and play darts all night long, and leave at 5 a.m. to go duck hunting. He shouted at people. He tried to jolly them along. He hardly ever wore proper robes, persuaded Mrs. Whitlow, the university's dreaded housekeeper, to make him a sort of baggy trouser suit in garish blue and red. Twice a day, the wizard stood in bemusement and watched him jog purposefully around the university buildings, his pointy wizarding hat tied firmly on his head with string. He'd shout cheerfully up at them because fundamental to the makeup of people like Mudstrom Ridcully is the iron belief that everyone else would like it too, only if they tried. Maybe he'll die, they told one another hopefully as they watched him try to break the crust on the River Ankh for the early morning dip. All this healthy exercise can't be good for him. Stories trickled back into the university. The Arch-Chancellor had gone 2 rounds bare-fisted with Detrius, a huge odd-job troll at the mended drum. The Arch-Chancellor had arm-wrestled with the librarian for a bet, and although of course he hadn't won, he still had his arm afterwards. The Arch-Chancellor wanted the university to form its own football team for the big city game on Hogswatch Day. Intellectually, Ridcully maintained his position for 2 reasons. One, that he has never ever changed his mind about anything. The other was that it took him several minutes to understand any new idea put to him. And this is a valuable trait for a leader, because anything anyone is still trying to explain to you after 2 minutes is probably important, and anything they give up after a minute or so is certainly something they shouldn't have been bothered telling you in the first place. There seemed to be more Mudstrom Ridcully than anybody could reasonably contain. Anybody could reasonably maintain. Plop, plop. In the dark cupboard of the cellar, the whole shelf was already full. There was exactly as much Windlepoons as one body could contain, and he steered it carefully along the corridors. Never expected this, though. I don't deserve this. There's been a mistake somewhere. He felt a cool breeze on his face and realized he'd tottered out into the open air. Ahead of him were the university gates, locked and shut. Suddenly, Windle felt acutely claustrophobic. He'd waited years to die, and now he had, and then he was stuck in this mausoleum with a lot of daft old men, where he'd have to spend the rest of his life being dead. Well, the first thing to do was get out and make a proper end to himself. Evening, Mr. Poons. He turned around slowly and saw the small figure of Modo, the university's dwarf gardener, who was sitting in the twilight smoking his pipe. "Oh, hello, Modo. I heard you was struck dead, Mr. Poons." "Yes, I was." "So you got over it, then?" Mr. Poons nodded and looked dismally around the walls. The university gates were always locked at sunset every evening, obliging students and staff to climb over the walls. He doubted very much that he'd be able to manage to do that. He clenched and unclenched his hands. Oh well. "Are there any other gateways around here, Modo?" "No, Mr. Poons." "Well, where shall we have one?" "Sorry, Mr. Poons." There was a vague sound of tortured masonry, followed by a vaguely Poons-shaped hole in the wall. Windle's hands reached back and picked up his hat. Modo relit his pipe. "You see a lot of interesting things at this job," he thought. Oh, I love his writing. It's just one of those authors whose imagination you can delve into and think, the fuck? But also, how delightful. And how delightful indeed. If anybody wants to join me on YouTube or Twitch, you're most welcome to on that side. Come and talk to me there. In an alley, temporarily out of sight of passers-by, someone called Reg Shu, who was dead, looked both ways, took a brush and painted tin out of his pocket, and painted on the walls the words, "Dead? Yes. Gone? No," and ran away, or at least lurched off at high speed. The Arch-Chancellor opened a window into the night. "Listen." The wizards listened. A dog barked. Somewhere a thief whistled, and was answered from a neighboring rooftop. In the distance, a couple were having a kind of quarrel that causes most of the surrounding streets to open their windows and listen and make notes. But these were only major themes against the continuous hum of the buzz of the city. Ankh-Morpork purred through the night, en route for the dawn, like a huge living creature, although, well, of course, this was only a metaphor. "Well," said the senior wrangler, "I can't hear anything special." "That's what I mean. Dozens of people die in Ankh-Morpork every day. If they all started coming back like poor old Windle, don't you think we'd know about it? The place would be in an uproar. More of an uproar than usual, I mean." "There's always a few undead around. Vampires and zombies and banshees and so on," said Dean doubtfully. "Yes, but they're more naturally undead," said the Arch-Chancellor. "They knew how to carry it off. They're born into it." "You can't be born to be undead," said the senior wrangler. "I mean, it's traditional," the Arch-Chancellor snapped. "There was something respectable about vampires where I grew up. They'd been in their family for centuries. Yes, but they drink blood," said the senior wrangler. "Doesn't sound very respectable to me. I read where they don't actually need the actual blood. They just need something that's in the blood. Hemoglobins, I think it's called." "Oh, I forgot a footnote. The senior wrangler." The post of senior wrangler was an unusual one, as was the name itself. In some centers of learning, the senior wrangler is a leading philosopher. In others, he's merely someone who looks after the horses. The senior wrangler at Unseen University was a philosopher who looked like a horse, thus neatly encapsulating all definitions. The other wizards looked at him. The dean shrugged. "Search me," he said. "Hemoglobins, that's what it said. It's all to do with people having iron in their blood." "I'm damn sure I've got no iron goblins in my blood," said the senior wrangler. "At least they're better than zombies," said the dean. "Much better class of people. Vampires don't go shuffling around the whole time." "People can be turned into zombies, you know," said the lecturer in recent runes, in conversational tones. "You don't even need magic, just the liver of a certain rare fish, the extract of a particular kind of root, one spoonful, and when you wake up you're a zombie." "What type of fish?" "How should I know?" "How should anyone know then?" said the senior wrangler nastily. "Did someone wake up one morning and say, 'Hey, there's an idea. I'll just turn someone into a zombie. I'll just need some rare fish liver and a piece of root, and it's a matter of finding the right one'? You can see can you see a queue outside the hut, can't you? Number 94, red striped fish liver and maniac root. Didn't work. Number 95, spike fish liver and dum rum root. Didn't work. No, 96. "What are you talking about?" said the Arch-Chancellor. "I was simply pointing out the intrinsic unlikelihood of—" "Shut up," said the Arch-Chancellor. "Seems to me, look, death must be going on, right? Death has to happen. That's what being alive is all about. You're alive and then you're dead, and it can't just stop happening." "But he didn't turn up for Windle," said the dean. "It goes on all the time," said Ridcully, ignoring him. "All sorts of things die all the time, even vegetables." "But I don't think death ever came for a potato," said the dean doubtfully. "Death comes for everything," said the Arch-Chancellor firmly. The wizards nodded, sagely. After a while, the senior wrangler said, "Do you know, I read the other day that every atom in your body is changed after every 7 years. New ones keep getting attached and old ones keep dropping off. It goes on all the time. Marvelous, really." The senior wrangler could do to a conversation what it takes a quite thick treacle to do the pedals of a precision watch. "Yes, what happens to the old ones?" said Ridcully, interested despite himself. "Dunno. They just float around in the air, I suppose. until they get attached to someone else. The Arch-Chancellor looked affronted. What? Even wizards? Oh yes, everyone. It's a part of the miracle of existence. Is it? Sounds like bad hygiene to me. I suppose there's no way of stopping it? I shouldn't think so. I don't think you're supposed to stop miracles of existence. But that means everything is made up of everything else. Yes. Isn't it amazing? It's disgusting, that's what it is. Anyway, the point I'm making. The Arch-Chancellor paused, trying to remember. You can't just abolish death. That's the point. Death can't die. It's like asking a scorpion to sting itself. As a matter of fact, said the senior wrangler, always ready with a handy fact, you can get a scorpion to... Shut up! But we can't have an undead wizard wandering around. There's no telling what he might take into his head to do. We've got to put a stop to him, for his own good. That's right, said Ridcully, for his own good. Shouldn't be too hard. Must be dozens of ways to deal with the undead. Garlic. Undead don't like garlic. Can't blame them, can't stand the stuff. Undead, said the bursar, pointing an accusing finger. They ignored him. And yes, they're sacred items, said the senior wrangler. Your basic undead crumbles into dust as soon as you look at them. And they don't like daylight, and if worst comes to worst, you can bury them at a crossroads. That's surefire, that is, and you stick a stake in them to make sure they never get up again. With garlic on it, said the bursar. Well, yes, I suppose you could put garlic on it, the senior wrangler conceded reluctantly. I don't think you should put garlic on a good steak. Just a little oil and seasoning, said the dean. Red pepper is nice, said the lecturer in recent runes. Shut up, said the Arch-Chancellor. Plop. The cupboard door's hinges finally gave way, spilling its contents into the room. Sergeant Colon of the Ankh-Morpork City Guard was on duty. He was guarding the brass bridge, the main link between Ankh and Morpork, from theft. When it came to crime prevention, Sergeant Colon found it safest to think big. There was a school of thought that believed the best way to get recognized as a keen guardian of the law in Ankh-Morpork would be patrol the streets and alleys, bribe informants, follow suspects, and so on. Sergeant Colon played truant from this particular school, not, he would hasten to say, because he was trying to keep down the crime, like he was trying to keep down salt in a sea. It's the only recognition that any keen guardian of the law was likely to get that's the sort that goes. Hey, body in the gutter, isn't that old Sergeant Colon? But because the modern go-ahead intelligent law officer ought to always be one jump ahead of the contemporary criminal. All right. I'm getting tired now. Being tired of reading out loud. Alrighty. Well, I'm gonna go now.